Furina Constellations versus the signature weapon. I understand this is going to be a very prominent question for a lot of you guys out there. Trust me, I've seen this question pop up in the feed quite a lot. So, well, welcome back, you degenerate, crazy Genshin players who want to know if they should get constellations or a weapon before getting a brand new character, like, I don't know, Shalonin coming back in 5.5. But it's okay, we're not here to judge, we're just here to listen. And in this video, what we're going to be doing at this moment is not just me giving you my opinion on what we should be doing here when it comes to constellations versus weapons. But what if instead of just doing that and me droning on and giving you just my opinion, we harvested the power of the collective knowledge of the internet and used AI in conjunction with my own opinion to sort of give you a little bit of details on what it is that you should be doing when judging whether you should be pulling for Furina Constellations or her own weapon. What's going to matter for you there? Well, guess what? I'm glad you asked. Let's check it out. So we asked Grok, everyone's, I know, favorite AI, favorite one, not even ChatGPT anymore. No, what constellations for Furina should I consider getting before I get her signature weapon? What did it have to say? Well, obviously it said, don't do it. It's a trap. It's a Hoyoverse game. No, what it says here, when deciding whether to prioritize Furina's constellations or her signature weapon in Genshin Impact, it depends on your goals for her role in your team. What a content creator, sort of inspired answer there. That's something that I could have rattled off as well. Whether you want her as a support, a sub DPS, or a hybrid of both, Furina the Hydro Archon, introduced in version 4.2, scales heavily with HP and provides team-wide damage buffs via her elemental bursts fanfare stacks. Her signature weapon, the Splendor of Tranquil Waters, boosts her personal damage, but her constellations often enhance both her supportive abilities and personal output more significantly. Based on her kit and general player consensus, here's a breakdown to help you decide which constellation to aim for before considering her weapon. This is gonna put us all out of a job, by the way. Why would you need me or anyone else where you can just ask a question on the internet and get a detailed breakdown response? Well, you know what? I'm going above and beyond. I'm doing the 3000 IQ play. I'm gonna reinsert myself back in the equation by asking the AI the question for you and bringing it back to you in a moderately, but probably not all that entertaining manner. So I'll throw something. What did I throw? Anyway, Furina's an already strong character at Constellation 0, offering a solid off-field damage and team-wide damage buff that scales with her fanfare stacks up to 300% base at Constellation 0. Her signature weapon is a 5-star sword with HP % substat and a passive that boosts elemental skill damage and max HP when HP changes, enhancing her personal damage and slightly improves her potential buffing ability. But it doesn't address her energy recharge needs, which can be high around 180 to 240% depending on your team. Constellations, on the other hand, offer not only broader utility and team synergy, making them more flexible as an investment early on. So let's break this down. So far, I kind of actually find it crazy that these would be all of the talking points that I would talk about. Energy recharge needs, the gain for personal damage versus team benefit, etc. C1 here is love is a rebellious bird that none can tame. This is a fantastic starting point. It says it grants Furina 150 fanfare points immediately upon using her elemental burst and increase her fanfare limit from 300 to 400. Now, when I answer a lot of comments and questions, how good is the Constellation 1 for Furina? It's very powerful. It allows you to get the most out of the reason why she's in your party, which is the large damage buff for the team. This constellation means she's going to start closer to her maximum buff potential, 100% bonus at 400 fanfare stacks, which is the new max with C1 with a level 10 burst instead of the 75% at Constellation 0, making her support role more consistent and easier to maintain without relying heavily on HP fluctuations. For most players, C1 is going to be a noticeable upgrade over her signature weapon because it strengthens her core mechanic, which is buffing the team, which is what I just talked about. While the weapon primarily boosts her own damage, aim for C1 first if you want a quick boost to her support utility. Is this going to be fact or false? In my opinion, this is going to be a fact. Something that the AI didn't talk about here is that not only do you get a little bit of more personal damage from getting a larger buff, which applies to her off the field at Constellation 1 because you get that extra 25% from being able to hit 400 fanfare stacks, right? 100% damage bonus. That's also going to apply to the rest of the team as well. But what it doesn't talk about is you don't need to change your build in any way, shape, or form. If you have something like the Festering Desire, or you're using the Favonius weapon, or you're using the fishing little pipe. No matter what your build is for Furina, getting C1 doesn't change anything that you need to change about her build. It's just going to make her better for herself and better in every single team that she's in. And it's going to be worth more over getting her weapon for her, which is 100% fact. Now let's check out Constellation 2 here, which is a woman adapts like duckweed in a water. I guess that's the name. I've never read these constellation names before. That's the weirdest one I think I've heard of. This is arguably her most valuable early constellation and is often recommended as a priority before her weapon. Fact or false? Let's see what it says here. C2 increases fanfare gain from HP changes by 250%. So 1% HP change equals 2.5 fanfare points, and adds a max HP boost of 0.35% per fanfare point above 400, up to a max of 140% max HP increase. This not only lets her reach her max fanfare faster, enhancing your team buffs, which is true. It's going to allow you to hit the fanfare stack much quicker, allowing you to have more uptime on a 100% damage bonus for the team, but it also is going to boost the HP of her skills as well as her healing if you choose to use her healing form, because her own max HP is going to go through the roof. So if you've seen a Furina with like 80,000, 90,000 HP in screenshots, it's because they have Constellation 2, and because she's an HP scaling character, this gives you a massive amount of damage for yourself as well, far outweighing the damage bonus that you would get from having her own signature weapon, Splendor of Tranquil Waters, on her. For many, C2 is going to be the sweet spot. It significantly improves her versatility and damage output, far outshining the weapon's benefits unless you're solely focused on her own personal DPS. If you can afford it, Constellation 2 is a strong target before pulling for Splendor of Tranquil Waters. Both these things, I am 100% behind. Constellation 1 and Constellation 2 are well worth what it is that you want to be spending on, well worth pulling. They're both insane constellations, and they're definitely going to suit you long-term as an investment for Furina being in your party, no matter what party she's going to be in. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Do you stop at Constellation 2? Is C3 still better than the weapon? Is C4 still better than the weapon? This is where it gets a little bit more murky. Constellation 3 is just going to increase the elemental burst level of her elemental burst by level 3, which is going to allow you to get increased healing and increased damage from fanfare stacks. The AI here, let's see, is it true or false? Should we get it or should we not? It's a solid upgrade for her support role, as a higher level burst means stronger team buffs, slightly, right? That's what I'm gonna say, not a huge amount, slightly. While less transformative than C1 or C2, it's still valuable if you're committed to maximizing her buffing potential. Some players suggest stopping here if you're prioritizing constellations over the weapon, as it rounds out her support kit nicely, which is very true. C3, in my opinion, is like the cherry on top of the cake or the pie that you don't really need to get, right? You're gonna get a few percentage points more for your fanfare stack damage bonuses for herself as well as the rest of the team. Constellation 4 improves her energy recharge. You get 4 energy for every 5 seconds when her skill either hits or heals, reducing her ER needs and letting you focus more on HP, crit chance, and crit damage. The AI here says it's useful but not essential if you're already managing her energy with an ER weapon or team battery. The explanation it gives for C4 here is a lot smaller than the other 3, and that's because it doesn't really change that much. But the big thing that it does do is, like we just talked about, giving you a bunch of energy, meaning that if you don't have a bunch of ER in your equipment and you do eventually want to pull for Splendor of Tranquil Waters, if you get C4 first, you're not going to have to rebuild your Furina at all. You can just leave her in your HP, crit chance, crit damage focus set with whatever amount of energy recharge you were having fine times with at Constellation 0. So what does this mean? It means that if you're really kind of gung-ho on building Furina with her own unique signature weapon, if you get C4 first and then you get her weapon, you can use whatever sort of gear you already have on your Furina. You can use your low ER artifact substat gear with her signature weapon, right? Think about it like this, right? You already have an ER weapon on your C0 Furina. You're doing well there. If you get the signature weapon, you're losing out on ER. You're gonna need to replace that ER from your weapon into your gear somewhere. However, if you get Constellation 4, you're basically replacing that energy recharge from your weapon, whether it's Festering Desire or the Fishing Pole, right? You're replacing that with the energy you get from C4, meaning you don't need to change your artifacts that much, if at all, once you put Splendor of Tranquil Waters on. Meaning that if you want to go for the weapon, here's my final diagnosis. You get Constellation 1 first, you get Constellation 2 first. Those are infinitely better than getting the weapon guaranteed, period. If you don't want to go for C3 or C4 afterwards, then you can sort of make the argument that getting the weapon will outweigh Constellation 3 or Constellation 4. Constellation 3 is debatable. You get a little bit more personal damage if you get the weapon instead of C3. You get a little bit more team buffing if you go ahead and get the C3 instead of the weapon and forego it, period. And then it comes to getting the weapon. The downside of actually pulling the weapon and getting the weapon is this: it does have very good stats on it. It's a fantastic weapon, but you're going to be replacing an energy recharge weapon of some kind in your build if you're using one beforehand with a non-energy recharge weapon, meaning you have to rebuild your Furina if you're using low ER artifacts in the first place at Constellation 0. Then you get C1, you get C2, you get C3, you get C4 for the energy regen, and then finally you get the weapon there. That's going to give you the best of every world. The downside of this one is, well, instead of just like the first one, C1 and C2 is 2 pities worth. This is C1, C2, C3, C4, and then the weapon, which is 5 pities worth of banner pulls. And if you're that far into Furina, that's probably where I would go. And then later on, if she gets, brought up again, you could think about going for the C5 and then finally the C6. So you can have that crazy all-in, do sort of what everything Furina wants to do. Those are the 3 aptitudes that I would want to express myself for you to go for, right? The easiest one and the most straightforward one, I think, is C1 and C2. Don't get the weapon. You're going to be set and ready to go. If you want to get the weapon afterwards, you don't care about rebuilding her, C1 and C2 first, and then the weapon. And then if you just don't care, I'm not sure why you watch this video, you get C1, C2, C3, C4, then get the weapon. And then you know what? You might as well go 5 and 6 afterwards. I don't know why we're answering the question. Should I just get everything for Furina? I guess so, guys. Make sure you hit that like and sub button, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.